Minglava. I'm here not just as a research professional. I'm here as a Burmese, to be exact, as a fellow Burmese of all of you. Before I say anything, I want to offer you, as a Burmese and a Buddhist at that, my heartfelt apology for what is happening in Burma. I think what we are witnessing is a predominantly Buddhist society sleepwalking into a genocidal space. And as a Buddhist, as a human rights activist, I feel it is my individual responsibility to speak the truth at any cost. One of the problems that we're facing today in Burma is not just that violent atrocities are being committed against the Rohingya, that our society insists on calling Bengali a very pejorative and racist term that delegitimize their in-group or Tayinda status in our country, is the failure of Burmese intelligentsia or the so-called civil society to speak out when atrocities are committed in the name of either Buddhism or national sovereignty and security. I think all of you, or if not all of you, many of you in this room are of Indian origin, ethnically speaking. And you are addressed or referred to as Kala. We all know what it means. But I don't think that you should feel less for being called Kala, because the Burmese civilization, if I may use that term, rests on the bedrock of a philosophy that was founded by the most famous Kala in intellectual history, Gautama Buddha. He was not Burmese. He was a Kala. Also, if we look at our history, especially our country's modern history, you know, the most influential and famous political organization, Dogama CEO, or We the Burmese organization, that became the backbone of the independence movement, was founded not simply by Buddhist the king, but the co-founder with the King Batan himself was a Muslim. And if you look at the martyrs of our country, one of them was the principal from Mandalay named U Razak. He was popularly elected to the to Aung San's cabinet by the Buddhist monks in our country. There are other highly distinguished sons and daughters of our country that subscribe to Islam, but that did not make them less Burmese. So what we have is a culture, a civilization, a society, and a modern nation state that owe its foundations to the great Kalas. So don't be ashamed of being Kalas. And I'm often, derisively referred to as a kala, taking money from the kalas or, from Saudi Arabia, all kinds of rumors. Let me tell you, there are individuals within our society that feel that their conscience needs to speak out when the majority of the society remains silent, when our own fellow Burmese, whatever their religion or ethnic background may be, are subject to state-sponsored atrocities. So I won't go into genocide because there have been enough said about the genocide of the Rohingyas. But I do want to say only 3 points. One is the ethnocide of the Rohingya. The term ethnocide has not been used in the previous speeches or presentations. The case of the Rohingyas is not just the case of a people that have been made stateless. The Rohingya have been subject to 40+ years of ethnocide. That is, state-sponsored policy of erasing the ethnic and cultural community of Rohingya ever existed. And that is where the Burmese civil society and the intellectual class have failed categorically, including the Presidential Commission appointed by President Thein Sein to investigate the violence between the Rohingyas and the Rakhines last year, and still going on. I think there's a lot of debate about where the Rohingyas originated and when they settled in the country. But there are two things that need to be brought into focus here. One is that the area that the Rohingya today live, northern Rakhine, these are borderlands. Like all other borderlands, they go back and forth between different power centers. And people of, Karen State, people of Kachin State, Shan State, Mon State, you always, the Chins, for instance, these are people that were pre-nation states. And they belong to different political systems. And as Amartya Sen put it in September last year at a seminar at Columbia, the Rohingyas did not create the problem. The problem came to them. The problem of a modern nation state, defining and demarcating national boundaries, splitting communities and people, on both sides of the border. And secondly, and perhaps most importantly, in the case of the Rohingya ethnocide, the Rohingya may be the only people in the world today that have been stripped off their citizenship by the 1982 Citizenship Act, as well as that have been stripped off their ethnicity status. I think historical arguments aside, one verifiably true fact is on the side of the Rohingyas. The Rohingyas were recognized as an ethnic group by 3 successive governments. The late UNU government in 1958, the caretaker government of General Ne Win from 1958, late 1958 until 1960s, early 1960s, and well into 1960s. And the last mention of the Rohingya were in the Burmese textbooks printed in 1978, the year the Nagamin operation to wipe the Rohingyas out of the country. And so I think there is an unmistakable fact that the Rohingyas were embraced as a constituent and constituted ethnic community of Burma. And finally, on the question of whether the Rohingyas were Dayinda, or in Malay, Bumi Putra, children of the land, Aung San, as early as 1945, 46, 47, redefined what it means to be a Burmese, what it means to be Dayinda. His definition was simple, inclusive, way ahead of his contemporaries in Burmese politics. He defined Dayinda as simply anyone whose umbilical cord was buried on the Burmese soil. So you see, we do not have to import any foreign or alien ideologies or new type of nationalism. As early as 1947, Aung San developed a vision that embraced everyone, irrespective of religion and ethnic background. And he was a pioneer in developing this inclusive civic nationalism. And so I think that we had a good ideological beginning as a country, but his vision was buried along with his body in late 1947. So I think as Burmese, irrespective of your ethnic background, irrespective of your religious faith, we need to return to Aung San's multicultural vision. And as a Burmese society, we must wake up from this sleepwalk into the ethnocide and genocide of the Rohingya, as well as the mass violence against Muslims. Thank you.